Namaste to one and all. I welcome you to yet another episode of Śabda-yoga. So, in this episode, we will be discussing the word Pramanam from the yogic literature. As usual, we will be looking into the etymological derivation of the word, then entries in the lexicon, and then the textual occurrences. And finally, we will see how all these come together and what are all the shades of the meanings that we can derive for this word in the yoga literature, predominantly based on Yogasūtra, Haṭha-yoga-pradīpikā and the Bhagavad-gītā. Now, first, we will get into the etymology of the word Pramana. So, it is made up of three components. So, pra, mang, and lyut. So, pra is the upasarga, and the mang is the dhatu, the root. Upasarga is the prefix, and then lyut is the suffix. Now, let us see. Pra is the prefix, prakarsha, intensity. It indicates intense or great. And then mang, mane is the root. So, mana is to measure. And then the lyut, the suffix, indicates the instrumentality. So instrumentality. So from this prefix suffix root combination, we can understand, or the derivation statement would be like this: pramiyate anena iti pramanam. So that by which measurement is done, or that by which one understands the measure of something. So a tool or a method or a system to understand something. So that becomes the meaning that we understand of the word Pramāṇa from the etymological derivation. So now we go to the lexical entry. In the Amarakosha, we see that Pramanam hetu maryada shastre yatta pramatrushu. So this is the entry where Pramanam refers to hetu, maryada, shastra, yatta, and pramata. So these are the five meanings given to the word Pramana in the lexicon. So lexicon also, along with the etymological derivation, lexicon also takes into account the conventional meanings where the word Pramana is used in. So we see that Pramana means hetu, cause. Pramana refers to maryada, the limits. And then shastra means any system or discipline of knowledge. And then yatta refers to the quantity, this much, the measure. And then pramatrushu, pramata, the perceiver. So these are the additional meanings. So from the etymology, we see that pramana is a method to measure, a tool to measure or understand something. So that was the etymological meaning. Along with that, five other meanings: cause, limit, shastra, quantity, and the perceiver. So these meanings are received, or we see from the lexicon. So 5 plus 1, 6 meanings so far have emerged by looking at the lexicon and also the etymology of the term Pramana. Now let's narrow down our focus. So in the entire Sanskrita literature, going by the lexicon and etymology, these are the 6 possible meanings that we see. And then now we refine our focus and look at the yogic literature, especially Yogasūtra primarily, and then the Bhagavad-gītā and the Haṭha-yoga-pradīpikā. As Yogasūtra is our primary focus, we take it up first, then later we'll take up Bhagavad-gītā and then the Haṭha-yoga-pradīpikā. So in 3 occasions, the word Pramana is found in the Yogasūtra. One is Pramāṇa viparyaya vikalpa nidra smritayaha. So in Sutra 6, chapter 1, we see 5 types of vrittis are mentioned. Pramana, Viparyaya, Vikalpa, Nidra and Smriti. So 5 types of vrittis or 5 types of activities of the mind are mentioned, where Pramana is also counted as one among the activities of the mind. So it is Pramana. According to this sutra, we see the right knowledge, then Viparyaya, wrong knowledge, and then Vikalpa, imagination, Nidra is deep sleep state, and then Smriti is remembering. So these are this is the first occurrence of the word Pramana in the Yogasūtra, where Pramana is one among the vrittis, and that vritti is in the form of right or valid knowledge. And so that vritti that brings about the right or valid knowledge. So then in Sutra 1.7, we see the Pramana being defined, or the various modes of right knowledge. So the various means by which the right knowledge, which is Pramana, is achieved, that is listed out in 1.7, where we see Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agamaha, Pramanani. So Pratyaksha, direct perception, Anumana, that is inferential knowledge, and then Agama, knowledge handed down from the texts and tradition. So these are Pramanas. So these are the modes of valid knowledge. So Pramana was listed among the 5 vrittis previously in the second case. So what are all the ways in which the Pramana is achieved? By Pratyaksha, direct perception using the senses, and by inference using the inferential capability of the mind, and Agama is verbal testimony or authentic teachings received from the text and the tradition. So that is also considered as Pramana in the Yoga Shastra. This is according to the second reference from the Yogasūtra. And the third is an interesting occurrence which comes in the 4th chapter of Yogasūtra, Kaivalyapada, where an interesting occurrence is there. Nacha ekachitta tantram vastu tad apramanakam tada kim syat. So there we don't find the word pramana directly. We find the usage apramanaka. Now, what is the which is connected to pramana? Pramana, pramanaka, apramanaka. So in that sense, Pramana is a component of this expression, hence in the sutra, and hence this sutra is also taken up for discussion. So in the 4th chapter, which is especially discussing a discussion on Kaivalya, so we see especially that the reality of the world outside is being established in a series of sutras. The world outside is independent and real from the mind. So mind is a different entity, the world outside is a different entity, and they have both these have independent existence. So that is the context in which the word apramanaka, this expression, is found in this sutra. So to understand this sutra, we have to go a step back to understand. So where we see that in that there is a view of the Buddhas who state that everything is Vijnana. The Vijnanavadis, the Buddhas or the Vijnanavad, there are various types of Buddhistic views, among which Vijnanavada is one such view, where everything is Vijnana. So the world outside is not real. Everything is the projection of one's own mind. So that is what is the Vijnanavada in a simple sense. So the world outside is not independent of one's own mind. So everything that we perceive is the projection of the mind. So that is the view. To reject that, in the previous sutra, it has been stated in the discussion, it has been stated that the world outside and the mind have two different paths. Vastu samyepi chitta bhedat tayoho vibhaktaha panthaha. So the paths are separate. So the world has a separate existence, and then the mind has a separate existence. So the world is not a mere projection of the mind. Tayor vibhaktah panthaha. Why? Because there is one object outside which is perceived by different minds in a different way. So if there is a if the mind is if everything is the projection of the self same mind, if everything is the projection of mere minds outside, then how can many people see the same object and have view about the self same object? For example, I can also see the tree, the other person also can see the tree, and so everyone concurs that there as a tree stands, though people may have different views about the self same tree. And the difference of opinion, chitta bheda, so the difference of opinion about the self same tree also indicates that there is an entity outside, and then each of the minds which are seeing the tree perceive it differently. Hence, it indicates that the vastu and the chitta are different, independent from each other. Though they are, one is perceived and the other is the perceiver or the instrument of perception, their paths are different. So that is how in the previous sutra it has been stated. To this, the Vijnanavadis may raise an objection that okay, if the multiplicity of the chittas looking at the self same object is brought in by you as part of the discussion, so let there not be multiple vijnanas, multiple chittas perceiving the same object. Let me have only one vijnana looking at it, and maybe the other chittas taking or the other chittas are the aspects of that one vijnana alone. So such a proposition is given by the Buddhas. So then again there also a problem will arise that is addressed in Sutra 4.16, where we find the word apramanaka. So okay, if multiplicity of chittas are not perceiving the same object, so it is only one chitta is perceiving the object. Even if you want to avoid the mistake of multiplicity, if you accepting multiplicity of chittas by saying that there is only one chitta which is perceiving in reality, then there will also be problem. How nacha eka chitta tantram vastu, the object cannot be taken as merely projection of the one ultimate chitta. So why nacha eka chitta tantram vastu? So why tad apramanakam? Tada kim syat? When, for example, I am seeing a pot or a tree outside, so when this vijnana, the only existing vijnana is focused on that tree or that pot, then okay, that object exists. So then if that only existing chitta is not perceiving the tree or the pot, if it is focused on some other thing, a cow or a dog, if it is focusing on that, then tad apramanakam. What happens to that object? So far, the tree had a pramana, a mode of knowing. So tree had a mode of knowing or being perceived, that is the chitta. The only vijnana was perceiving that particular tree, so it was sapramanaka, means it was connected with a mode of knowing, that is this chitta. When the chitta, or from the point of view of the Vijnanavadins, this chitta was projecting, this vijnana was projecting that object. So then what happens when if the vijnana, the only vijnana is focusing on some other object, or it is manifesting some other object, a building or a cycle or a car, something like that, if it is projecting something else, then what happens to that the self-same, the object or the initial tree which was being perceived? Where does it go? Is it, does it simply vanish? So it was perceived, now it is not being perceived. The mind is engaged, the only existing mind is engaged in something else. Then what happens to that? Does it vanish? Should we say that it simply vanishes? But what happens is, when the self-same tree, or does it get destroyed? But at a later point of time, what happens when the chitta sees the self-same object? Oh, it is the same tree that was perceived earlier. So there is a pratyabhijna or a recollection that, oh, this was the same tree which was recollected earlier. So if we say that when the only existing mind is engaged with that tree, then the tree is projected. When it is engaged in other object, this object vanishes away, then then a new tree, again when I am thinking of the tree, then a new tree manifests. Then while looking at the same tree, I should not get the view that I am looking at the same tree which I saw earlier. That pratyabhijna should not be there, but it is there. So hence that nacha ekachitta tantram vastu, the Vijnanavadins alternative suggestion that let there not be multiple chittas perceiving the self same object, which raises a possibility that the paths of the mind and the object are different. Let there be only one mind which is projecting every object. Even when that view is taken, there is a problem about an object which has been seen, and now the mind has moved to some other object. What happens to the earlier perceived object? So a problem, tada kim syat, what will happen to that? Will that object exist? Will that object go into an oblivion? Then how come it miraculously it appears when the self same tree or object is perceived? So tada, there is a problem when with this view also. Whereas when we see that the mind is different and then the objects outside have a different independent existence, then there is no problem. So it is in this context tad apramanakam, when that single vijnana as proposed by Vijnanavadins is not the Pramana, is not projecting, is not engaged with the same object. So apramanakam, that object which is apramanakam, what happens to that object? So in this way, we see the expression apramanakam, bereft of a mode of knowing. The object becomes bereft of a mode of knowing. So in this context, this is the third occurrence of the word Pramana, where the word Pramana is a component of the compound apramanakam, which occurs in the 4th chapter. So these are the 3 occurrences where chitta, so Pramana is a vritti, and the vritti of right knowledge, and then 3 modes of Pramana, Pratyaksha, Anumana and Agama. And then in the 4th chapter, there is a discussion on the mind engaging with the object. So in that sense also, in that context also, we see the expression Pramana. So now we go to the Bhagavad-gītā, where the word, and we look for the references for the word Pramana. We find 2 occurrences of the word Pramana. Yadyadācarati shresthaha tattadevetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanu vartate. So here again, this Pramana, the word Pramana is found. So whatever is done by great people, yadyad acharati shreshtaha tattadeva itaro janaha. Others also simply follow the great people. Sayat pramanam kurute. Whatever is upheld as an authority by great people, then lokaha tad anuvartate. The other people accept it and follow it. So whatever sayat pramanam kurute. So whatever is upheld as authority. So here Pramana is used in the sense of authority. So whatever is upheld as an authority by the Shrestha or the great or noble people, others follow it. So this is the occurrence of the word Pramana. And then there is another occurrence. Tasmat shastram pramanante karya karya vyavasthitau jnatva shastra vidhanuktam karma kartum iharhasi. So towards the end of the 16th chapter in Daivasura Sampad Vibhaga Yoga, to manifest the Daivi qualities, to develop, nurture, foster Daivi qualities in oneself. So what should one do? Where should one look? What is the authoritative or authentic source? Pramanam. So what is the authoritative or authentic or right source of knowledge to manifest the Daivi guna? So Shastram, the Shastric lore, the Vedas, and the interpretative exegetical literature, the Vedas, Vedangas are the Shastra. So there they teach us. So they are the Pramana, they are the authority, they are the sources of right knowledge. on karya akarya vyavasthitau, with regard to the discernment of what should be done and what one should refrain from. Hence, one should know the Shastra, one should approach the Shastra with the Pramana Buddhi, and then one should go about doing one's activity. So here, in these two references or occurrences in the Bhagavad-gītā, we see the word Pramana being used as authority and a source of right knowledge. So in that context, in Bhagavad-gītā, the word Pramana is used. And then in Haṭha-yoga-pradīpikā, there is one lone occurrence of the word Pramana, where it is used in the sense of iyatta, or the measure. Dhanu Pramana pariyantam Shilagni jala varjite ekante mathika madhye Haṭha-vyam Haṭha-yogina. So this shloka is about the construction of a yoga matha, a place, a monastery for yogic, Haṭha-yogic practices. So Dhanu Pramana Parijantam. So Dhanu Pramanam. So the hermitage that is to be established, the yoga matha that has to be established by the Hatha Yogin, should be away from the rocks, Shila, Agni, fire, Jala, and water. How far should it be away? Dhanu Pramana Parijantam. To a measure of a dhanus. So measure. So Dhanu Pramana here refers to Pramana, measure, yatta, the distance, or the quantity or the measure of length of the dhanus. What is dhanus? Dhanus, we can simply translate it as a bow, but dhanus is a unit of measurement in our ancient tradition. Just like hasta is a unit and dhanus is a unit. So one dhanus is 4 hastas, and then one hasta is of a measure of 18 inches. So in this way, at least for dhanu pramana, it should be away. The yoga matha should be away from Shila, Agni, and Jala. That is rocks, hard, rocky surface, Agni, fire, and then Jala, source of water like river, lake, pond, etc. It should be away for a dhanu pramana. So in this sense, in Hatha-yogic context, we see Pramana being used to denote a measure. So just to summarize these 3 occurrences, so we saw that in Yogasūtra, primarily, Pramana is a vritti, and one among the 5 vrittis, and right knowledge, and it is also used in the sense of modes of right knowledge, pratyaksha, anumana, and agama, direct perception, inference, and also agama, that is verbal testimony. So all these modes of knowing and the knowledge generated by this in the form of a mental activity vritti was captured under the term Pramana in Yogasūtra, in Yogasūtra's context. When we come to the Bhagavad-gītā, the self-same word is used as authority. Yadyad acharati shreshtaha sayat pramanam kurute, and also later Shastram Pramanam. So the practices of the great people is Pramanam, and also the Shastram is Pramanam and authority. So in that sense, in Bhagavad-gītā, it is used in authority, and later we see in the Haṭha-yoga-pradīpikā, it is used to denote a measure. So a measure of dhanuhu, or a bow length. Bow length is 4 hastas. One hasta is 18 inches, and so on and so forth. So when even in the yoga literature also, it is interesting to note that these are the 3 varied kind of meanings for the word pramana that could be found, and hence one should be very careful and context conscious in interpreting the word pramana, and these varied meanings of the self-same word pramana could be understood by this exercise of Śabda-yoga. So thank you very much, and we end this episode on the word pramana here. Namaste.